Welcome into another edition of ROAR'n With the Bengals here on ISUBengals.com. Brandon Baney joined by head football coach at Idaho State University, Charlie Ragle. Coach Ragle, back after the bye week. What's going on?
Back after a little hiatus. Well rested.
Apparently my questions were too probing, too difficult. You were shook. You needed a week
rattled like never before. And I heard you say on the last show that I set the bar okay. So I'm here to make sure that that bar is set so high, nobody can jump over it.
See, that's the problem with Coach taking the week off. He goes back and reviews the film, even if he wasn't participating. So
everybody's got to be accountable.
That's right. Well, we did have Taylor Mazzoni, offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, on last week. He did a great job filling in. He set the bar a little higher, so we're gonna just keep climbing that ladder. You got a little beef with Coach Mazzoni though, because he brought up how, as an assistant coach, you guys cross paths in the Pac-12 a lot, and he's undefeated against you.
Well, I think you brought it up actually, but he did take a shot on him. He said, let everyone know he was undefeated, which he is. So you can't argue with the results. But like I said in the pre-interview here, he kind of like brushed over. Went up against him in recruiting. He kind of brushed over that he didn't win a battle. So he might be, undefeated on the football field. I'm going to take the undefeated in the recruiting battles.
Well, he may have won a few of the battles, but you won the war because you're the boss now.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
No, he's Taylor's awesome, man. We go back a long ways, as he said, and had a lot of fun seeing him out on the recruiting trail. And he said that when he called me to try and link up to have a option of possibly interviewing for the OC job, I didn't call him. Well, the funny story about that is I was driving to Flagstaff that day. And I had our O-line coach in the car because I was recruiting for Cal. And I had the final interview the next day on Wednesday. So this is a Tuesday. And we're driving up to Flagstaff to do an in-home visit with the young man. And Angus McClure, shout out to my guy Angus. And he's like, and he worked with Taylor too at UCLA. And he's like, so he's like, you going to answer that? And I'm like, and I knew what he was calling for. And I'm like, no, I was like, what? We're getting into Flagstaff. We'll catch him on the back end. So I just think like, all right. Well, then he calls me back that afternoon on the way back down the hill. And X is like, why aren't you taking his calls? And I'm like, I'll get him, later. So Angus, being a savvy vet that he is, about 2 minutes later, driving down the old I-17, he looks at me and he goes, you got something going on? And I'm a pretty forthright guy, but I couldn't say anything at the time. And I'm like, nothing, man, nothing. And so obviously a couple days later, we hooked up. But yeah, it was real funny because I had to avoid both those calls. And usually, like you said, we'd hook up out on the road, and especially in Arizona. So
your poker face is okay because people knew something was up, even though they didn't hear it directly.
They had an idea, you know how the world of college football is, the grapevine, man. It's pretty expansive. It stretches from one end of the country to the other, and I think there's some word out there, but you gotta stay tight to your vest until you get it locked in. And so I wasn't sure I had the job by any stretch. So I wasn't gonna take any calls or talk about it until I had it locked up. So which was a few days later, and then Taylor and I ended up connecting about a week later out in Berkeley. And part of the reason why I hired Taylor is because one, obviously he's a sharp offensive mind, but great energy, but he wanted to be here, and he flew up to Berkeley to meet me on his own dime. And, that said a lot to me, like, hey man, this guy, I came here, did the whole song and dance when I got the job, and then had to fly back to Berkeley to close up shop. And he called me and said, hey man, like, I want to meet. And I said, okay, let's do it. And I had a few interviews while I was here. And then I got back to Berkeley, and he and I actually met at the offices there in Cal. They were gracious enough to let me still work there, even though I wasn't working for them. But so we spent several hours meeting, and I walked out of there very impressed. And obviously the rest is history.
Like everyone on staff, Coach Mazzoni, a real go-getter. So
no doubt.
It's good you're all on the same team now.
That's right.
Well, let's talk about your team, Idaho State. Real quick, since you weren't on last week, let's just briefly revisit the UNLV game. And it seemed like there were flashes of good play, flashes of brilliance, but just the consistency of play to play maybe a little bit lacking. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, like I told the kids, let's make UNLV beat us. And they certainly did. You got to tip your hat to them. I think they're well coached. I think Marcus does a nice job with the offense. And, I worked with Keith for a year. I've known Keith a long time. And, as their DC, I thought he had those guys playing sound football. I thought their D-line was impressive. And so they did a nice job, But with that being said, first and foremost, tip our hat to them. They beat us. There's some plays that we could have made in that game to make it definitely a closer football game. And who knows? There's an interception that gets thrown right to DJ Hagler, and he drops it, dives for it and misses it. The opening series of the game, their quarterback, and he's had a tumultuous career up to this point, right? And he's so nervous he fumbles the ball out of his left hand and then kicks it, and we had a chance to recover that. We didn't. But if we pick him off twice, by the 9-minute mark of the second quarter, and the last interception being the one that we could have probably walked in for a touchdown and makes the game 17-14, what does that do to his confidence, first of all? And then second, what does it do to our momentum? And I think in those games when you're playing a bigger opponent, if you will, 85 scholarship team, those first quarter and a half is kind of like a boxing match early on. You're kind of filling out the competition, haven't played a scrimmage or anything like that. And so if all of a sudden the separation starts, which it did 2 plays later after we dropped that, and they go up 24-7, but if we score and make it, 17-14, what happens? What happens to that young man that's playing quarterback for UNLV? Because we spoiled his confidence, very, very well after our game. He's got to believe that he can go to Cal and, kill it, and wish him the best of luck. But, we certainly had something to do with that. And that's just the frustrating thing is you want to, make them beat us. And they did, but we certainly helped them at times.
So after that second quarter, the second half, pretty even battle with UNLV. What did you say to the team at halftime? How do you get them to kind of hit the reset button and forget about what happened in that second period?
Well, and that's how, I just got done doing an interview for the game coming up here at San Diego State. And, it's one of the things I said, what I was most proud of was that the kids didn't quit. And when you have that, you have the belief of your program, you have the buy-in from your players. And when you have that, that's a very powerful thing. And you can build on that. And as I told them, no game is won or lost on one play. And we're down, an extraordinary amount at halftime, as you're well aware. And, we're not going to get it all back in one play, as I told them. So let's go out and just play one play at a time. And I said, really, when we pop on the film on the bus ride home, I'm going to be looking at how hard the guys played in the second half. Like, all right, the score is the score is the score. We can't control that anymore. We can, but, it's games, for the most part, out of reach. We're going to hack away. But what we can't control is now at this point in the second half, how hard can we play? And can we execute our assignments better than what we did in the first half? And I think the guys did that. And, again, it was a 14-7, Bengals in the second half. And granted, they took out their starting quarterback, but they still played with a bunch of their starters in there too. It wasn't all backups, So it was encouraging, and it's something to build on for our players. But, again, I'm not here for moral victories, and neither are they. We don't work, 10 months, 9 months out of the year to play 3 months of football, and hopefully into the playoffs, by patting each other on the back and handing out popsicles and saying, hey, attaboys, we got to get some W's on the scoreboard.
Kind of an unusual start to the year where you have a game and then a bye right away. And if you had gotten the win, obviously Coach would say, hey, the bye is at a bad time. We want to keep it rolling. But after a loss, did the bye week help kind of refocus and get ready for the next opponent?
Yeah, I think, having to play these 2 games, against 85 scholarship teams is extremely tough. And it's not ideal by any stretch. And so to have a bye in between them is very advantageous for us.
Well, we'll talk more about that opponent coming up this Saturday, the San Diego State Aztecs. Right after this break, you're watching/listening to ROAR'n With the Bengals. We'll be back right after this on isubengals.com. back to ROAR'n With the Bengals here on ISUBengals.com. Brandon Baney talking with Charlie Ragle, head football coach here at Idaho State University. So off the bye week, now you got to get ready to hit the road again, and you're going to travel to San Diego this time. Another FBS opponent, another money game, another 85 scholarship game. But what's the message to the team ahead of this showdown?
Well, and I think, it has to stay consistent all season. I mean, these kids, they're smart kids. We got a smart football team, and they know we're playing an opponent that has more scholarships and has a history of being highly successful, not just in the Mountain West, but on the West Coast period. I think going into this season prior to their loss at Arizona, I want to say they were like 5-0 or 6-0 against the Pac-12. So, they're well coached. They have a, historic value as one of the better teams on the West Coast. And so our kids know that. But as I've told our kids, really when you get into this and you start, breaking it down into the very minute details, it really boils down to it's always about us. We can't control. We didn't make the schedule. We can't control who's on the other side of the line of scrimmage. So what we can control is how well we execute and how well we play. And so that's what I'm going to be looking for on Saturdays. How hard do we play? I always want our kids to play hard. And then, do we capitalize on opportunities that we have during the course of the game? And, that remains to be seen. But that's what we have to do. We have to be a football team that is getting better as the course of the season goes on. And then ultimately, right, it has to translate into wins. Nobody knows that better than me. But, we can't control San Diego State. So we've got to go out and play as hard as we can, play as mistake-free as possible, and execute our assignments, whether they be on OD or special teams. And that's what we'll look for in assessing the game at San Diego State on Saturday evening.
Yeah, it seems like in the non-conference portion of the schedule especially, you're more focused on your team than the opponent. And then when you get into conference play, you study up a little more. But how much time do you devote to watching what your team did last week and trying to correct some of those things versus actually studying, preparing for a non-conference opponent?
Well, I think first, let me say this. I think regardless of whether it's non-league or league, it's still always going to be about the Bengals. It isn't going to be about Montana here in a few weeks. They're going to do what Montana does. We've got to do what ISU does at the highest level to give us a chance to win the football game. It's no different here. Now, we went back and spent last week, the bye week. We took a couple days to get healed up, the road trip, and then we went out and practiced. And we really spent a lot of time on ISU, trying to clean up the things that we didn't do well. And then we had a small emphasis of San Diego State on that Thursday practice. And then I gave them a couple days off over the weekend. And now this week it's all about, our opponent and focusing on what San Diego State does and how we can try and, take advantage of some of those things.
What were some things you saw from that UNLV game that you would like to see improve?
Well, I think when you talk about defensively, we need to be cleaner. We can't miss as many tackles as we did. We've got to play with leverage and understand what that leverage looks like and make those tackles accordingly. We got to line up right. We did a bunch of things defensively. That was probably, talking to Coach Schaffner, that was probably the most frustrating thing that watching our defense, because they haven't been that way all spring, all fall camp. And, a third down situation, we're bringing a zero package in with a blitz, and we got our corner pressed into the boundary. We haven't done that. We don't coach that. And, just things like that where guys started to, I don't know if the moment got too big for them. Guys are lining up on the wrong side. So we just got to correct some of those little mistakes. And they're little, but they end up being big problems. And so, offensively, we've got to be more consistent. We showed flashes from our offensive line, our run game a little bit at times, and certainly in the passing game. But you got to be a model of consistency. I mean, I know everyone says, well, you give up all these points, Coach, in the second quarter. But I also, like I said to Coach Mazzoni, we also went 3 and outs during that time. We could have saved the defense by going on an extensive drive that would have ate up 6 or 7 minutes. And we didn't do that either. It's team football. And then, like I said, we called a bonehead, and I called a boneheaded call there. I think I panicked, in first head coaching game. It felt like the game was getting away from us. Thought we had the look, and we're going to run a fake punt there. And it was just a bad call. And put the defense on a short field, and that was idiotic. And so now it's, whatever it was, 31-7. So, more consistency out of the offense. And then special teams wise, we got to be better on kick cover. We got to find some guys that are dogs and I want to go down there and hit people. And then, it's my forte, and the long snapper has to be better. He knows that. He's got to be consistent. I think we've got a really good kicker punter in Ian Hershey, and I think that's pretty obvious for everybody to see. But so I think when you talk about it, it's really just consistency all across the board from all three faces.
Yeah, it seemed, and again, fans at home are watching, and they're watching the defensive secondary give up touchdowns, but only the coaches know, okay, was it because we didn't get home on the pass rush, or was it because of coverage? And so it's easy for the fans to nitpick this and that, but really, until you go back and watch the film, you're not even sure in the moment, right?
Well, I think that we better be, but to your point is that spot on. Like it's everybody sees the field goal kicker who misses the kick, but didn't realize that the snap was too high, so it was hard for the holder to get down. Or the holder spun the ball when he should not have, and it affected the kick. I mean, just like you said, we have a zero pressure, and we don't get home. It's hard to cover for long durations of time back there. I don't care who you are. And so, it's team football. I mean, my son's 10, and he's a pretty avid sports fan. He could point out, oh, well, this DB got beat, that DB got beat. Those are easy things. It's understanding, in the moment, what was supposed to happen on that play. Well, we should have had double-edged pressure, and this guy didn't come. Or he did come and didn't, got picked up, didn't win the one-on-one. And so that's what makes the games within the games, as we say, and that's where we've got to be better. And like I said, it really just is a model of consistency on all three phases.
Definitely. And then I've seen a lot of times defensively as well where a guy tries to do too much instead of doing his job, doing his 1/11th, right?
No doubt. And I think that's what we got into Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago, UNLV. I think guys, the moment got too big for them. Playing in Raider Stadium, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it just, some guys, we had guys lining up, doing things that they had never done. And you just, that's a head scratcher when you haven't seen it in, 14 practices of spring ball and then whatever 20 some odd practices that we had at fall camp. You haven't seen them do that. That's hard to live with as a coach because it's like, man, where did that come from? So, but you know what? That's part of it. And our job is to get it cleaned up. And like I said, we've got to be better for that on Saturday when we play San Diego State.
Definitely. So you studied up San Diego State and watched the film. You had a bye on Saturday. Did you have the clicker in your hand and watch what other Big Sky teams were doing around the league?
I took a little date with my wife to, of all places, Buffalo Wild Wings. Posted up, probably drove the server that waited on me crazy, but I had him fire up 4 TVs on the wall there to the games I wanted to watch, and I certainly watched Big Sky action. I watched my Cal Bears go at it on UC Davis. But it goes back to Thursday night. I was on my couch watching ASU and NAU, so I got to see that. I watched later that night at home Washington State and Idaho, so I got to see them play. I watched a smorgasbord of football on Saturday on the bye.
Was there one team or a player that jumped out to you from everything you observed?
Man, that's a great question. Obviously I watched the San Diego State game and probably stating the obvious, but Georgia, Oregon. I mean, how impressive Georgia was, especially after losing as many guys as they did. And I got a special rooting interest in that game because the OC at Oregon is a kid that I coached, is a friend of mine. We're close, and I was pulling for him, and so I watched that game a little more intently. And, that was just impressive. And I think what Alabama did to Utah State later in the afternoon, early evening was equally as impressive. So a lot of football. I'll tell you, probably the number one thing that stood out to me is just how many mistakes there were, especially in the kicking game. I think you even see it over the course of the LSU Florida State game last night, Georgia Tech, Clemson has 2 blocked punts. They get 2 blocked punts. It just, mistakes in the kicking game, and that's something that we are certainly cognizant of that we cannot have happen to us or it's just going to make it a further uphill battle for the Bengals on Saturday.
Yeah, especially as a special teams guy, I know you're really keyed in on
Killing
that.
me.
So in a matchup against a big school like a San Diego State, you have to win the special teams battle, right?
You at least have to have a push. You know what I mean? Like, you can't give up big plays, and you can't shoot yourself in the foot. You know, obviously we got an athletic guy back there, but you know they're going to come with some pressure. San Diego State against our play and deserve. They do it anyway. And now after watching our film, I'm guaranteeing they're going to come maybe every single time we punt. So you know we've got to be ready for that, and we've certainly got our work cut out for us.
Hopefully it's more kickoffs instead of punts on Saturday.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
All right. Well, what's it going to be like for you going back to California? It's a state you've been to a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like I think Greg Woods asked me that yesterday. You know, is it cool to go to Vegas or to San Diego? And I'm like, no, I'm not going there for vacation. You know, it's a very we have a very strict schedule, and that's what we adhere to. You know, we get on the plane or the bus, depending. In Vegas, we're on a bus. San Diego will be on a plane. You know, you land, you get on a bus. We're going to go over to Snapdragon, look at where our locker room's at. What's the walk from the field to the locker room? Make sure that our times match up so we get our players on the field in a succinct time, right? So that the schedule is exactly what we want it to be before kickoff. And then we get back on the bus. We go to the hotel. We have meetings. We have dinner. We go to sleep. We get up in the morning. We eat. We have more meetings. Then we go to the stadium, play the game, and then we get back on the plane and come home. So there's really not a whole lot of time to sit around and appreciate. I love San Diego, one of my favorite cities in all of the United States. But you don't have, and maybe Vegas just a little bit more for obvious reasons. But, you know, you don't have time to enjoy that. You know what I mean? Obviously, we went down because we bust on Thursday to Vegas. So, you know, down there the extra day, I got to see, you know, a couple of friends and my mom and my brothers. And so that stuff was cool. But outside of that, you know, you're trying to win football games, take your vacation in the off season.
Definitely. Well, you were rattling off everything in the schedule of events. Only you could make something like eating sound like a chore. Yeah, and then we got to eat, and then we got to...
Well, I'll tell you what. I need it to be less of a chore and do less of it so I can drop some LBs here. But, you know, it is. It's just, you know, it's a very regimented process. And, you know, we know what time it is, and it's football season. We got to go try and win some football games.
All right, well, we'll be cheering you on Saturday as the Idaho State Bengals take on the San Diego State Aztecs. Good luck, and hopefully we'll see you back here next week, Coach Ragle.
You can count on it. I'll be back. Appreciate you.
All right, sounds great. We'll come back and talk a little ISU volleyball coming up next year on ROAR'n With the Bengals on ISUBengals.com.
Sprinkler, you start it up, you bring this arm up, and then you just come through like that. My go-to dance move? Just got to get one of these right here. It's Jake twerking. Mine would definitely have to be this one, you know.
Oh, he got it. See, look at him. Oh, hell no. Yeah. Man, where?
Is this right here?
Oh, probably the squabble. If I mess this up, you gotta cut. But something like. We got this, you know what I'm saying? You can do something nothing crazy, you feel me?
I'm not doing Brandon dance move. I got hit though. You gotta hit that Dougie, man. That's what you gotta do. That's right there, the Dougie.
I'll start getting in trouble. Hey.
Oh!
I don't dance.
You have one, I know.
I boogie. Dance move.
You have to do it.
You know, my go-to dance move is the Dougie.
I like the salsa.
Welcome back to ROAR'n With the Bengals on ISUBengals.com. Brandon Baney joined by first-year Idaho State volleyball coach Sean Carter. Coach Carter, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So introduce yourself to Bengal Nation a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, where you've been along your coaching stops.
I started coaching right when I graduated high school. So I started coaching club volleyball kind of college job. I was like, man, I can get paid for this, and I only do practices a couple times a week and a few tournaments here or there. Is great for a college kid, but I really, really enjoyed doing it. And so as I was going through my undergrad and doing all of that, I was like, hey, man, if I could do this college coaching thing and make a living out of that, that's something I'd really be interested in. So kind of started then. So I went from, after graduating from the University of Arizona, where I helped with the women's program while I was there. I went to an NAI school called Masters University, where we got to compete in the NAI national tournament for 2 years in a row. I got to coach a NAI Freshman of the Year. Did some cool things there. And then from there, I went to Wichita State, where I was the second assistant at first and for 2 or 3 years, and then I became the first assistant, then got promoted to associate head coach, and I'd kind of been learning under Chris Lamb, who has quite an extensive resume for the last 8 to 9 years. That's where I've been.
Well, where did you grow up? Did you play volleyball growing up?
Yeah, I grew up in Valencia, California. It's a little bit north of Los Angeles, but I happened to grow up on the couch of my best friend's house, and his dad happened to be a really good volleyball coach in the area. So he kind of recruited me off his couch to start this volleyball team when I was in 8th grade. Kind of made us in one of the better teams in the country for youth volleyball. I was lucky enough to get a high school coach that coached at UCLA prior to coming to our high school. He was kind of getting out of college coaching and all of that. So I've been very fortunate to have quite a few good mentors along the way.
And did you play beach volleyball at all during that time?
A little bit, that was more for like leisure and fun. But we played in a few tournaments. But I was certainly more competitive on the indoor scene.
Sure. And what position did you play?
My main position was the libero position, but I've played everything except middle blocker along the way. So I've set in high school. I also played outside hitter. So I've done a lot, but the libero position is where I played in college.
So then as a coach, do you find yourself paying not more attention, but more in tune with the defensive side of the ball?
I'd say no now, just because of, working for Chris Lamb the last 8 to 9 years, the whole staff does everything. So some days I may be with the setters, then I may be with some middle blockers, then I may be with, other positions. So certainly the passing, digging stuff is just what's natural as far as being a player, but I feel very comfortable with all of the positions. And that's kind of how I'd like my staff to be. But we'll certainly, like right now, Haley's really comfortable with passers and diggers, and she'll probably be doing a lot of passing coaching, at least in practice and that kind of stuff. Chelsea's going to handle the defensive stuff, and I'm going to be spending way more time like with setters and middle blockers and some outside hitters and that kind of thing. So it'll be a mix of kind of everything.
A mix of kind of everything. That's a good way to describe your team right now, because you're trying different players out in different rotations, in different sets, different formations. It really is kind of just a work in progress. Let's kind of figure out where we're at, right?
Yeah, unfortunately for them, they got me as a head coach with that stuff. I'm certainly much more willing to tinker and make adjustments and try different things because we're just going to keep trying to find a better formula so that we can keep improving. And they've answered the bell greatly, and they've handled that very, very well. And I'm hoping that we can settle into something a little bit more concrete as we move forward. But being able to kind of adjust or play people in multiple spots certainly gives us some advantages.
Yeah, have you kind of set on like maybe Big Sky Conference play as a time when you want to have a set rotation?
Yeah, you would think, but I've also been on a team where we played 7 different lineups in a conference tournament to win a conference tournament. When we were in the Missouri Valley, it was just one lineup played way better against a certain matchup, and a different lineup played a lot better against another matchup. So if we think that's the case, and I feel confident that our girls can go out and execute their role within whatever system we decide, then we'll go with what we think's best.
And yet along the way, with all the tinkering and experimentation, you're winning matches too, which is always nice. 4-3 record as we're recording this, and how difficult is that to balance, trying to get your players looks at all the different spots versus, hey, we need to go out and win this match?
There's certainly a dance to that, a coordination. But, the biggest bummer is, about playing Boise State yesterday was that we didn't get time to, really train and work on a few things that I really wanted to get to with our setters and middles. But obviously you got to play teams like that. And it was a great match, and, we really were in a position to win the match. So we just got to kind of learn how to keep leads when we have them, and it's certainly nice to be in some of these matches that we're in, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the Boise State matchup in a second, but let's talk about the Gonzaga tournament that you went to. You play the host Bulldogs right away. Time and again, backs against the wall, your team battles back and ends up winning it in the fifth set, 3-2. I mean, how exhilarating was that as a coach to watch that back and forth affair?
It's obviously always fun, but that's why we love doing this. I think it's those matches that are kind of make it. But I was just really proud of our girls, because when you look at the stat sheet, we shouldn't have really been in the match, but they didn't quit. They just kept fighting, and I kept telling them, hey, let's just keep it close. We just got to keep it close, and then when it gets down to the end, you just got to be better for 2 to 3 points. And they certainly were able to do that. So we've been playing better as we go, but it's always great to win 5-set matches and to win matches that everything isn't going well. So that was really, really a great win.
Yeah, and even though it was a tournament that was Gonzaga's home venue, true road game, all that good stuff. And then even more impressive to me was, after an exciting match like that, sometimes there's a letdown. Like, you're so spent from climbing the hill but you got to come back the next day. Mm-hmm. You play CSUN, Cal State Northridge, and there is no letdown. You sweep them 3-0. That to me was also very impressive.
Yeah, that was probably our cleanest match yet, meaning we didn't make very many errors. We scored the ball really well, and that was obviously great. And then, so very, very happy with that.
And then you get to the Boise State match on Monday. Tell us how this came about, because it wasn't originally on the schedule, right? And then, I think it's really exciting when two in-state programs can play against one another.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I don't get to take any credit for it. I think, it was either Sammy or Pauline. It might have been Pauline, so give her the props for that one. But yeah, Sean at Boise State, I've looked up to him for a while. I think have some really good teams, and they certainly get some really good recruits. So the fact that they're willing to come here and play them, I texted him after the match and was like, hey, thanks for doing that. I really want to keep this going. And he texted me back, yes. It's certainly, we can't get a cheaper match as far as traveling and that kind of thing. But I think it's good for volleyball in the state, especially if we can keep it competitive like it was. It's great for the fans, and it's certainly great for the athletes. Yeah,
Reed Gym was rocking and rolling yesterday. How exciting was that for your first home match as ISU's coach, and to have Reed Gym packed like that and making noise?
It's obviously great. It's more fun when people show up to watch you play. But we gotta respect that, that level of support, and we have to, make our girls understand that's kind of a gift that we're given, and let's not take that for granted. And we got to continue to work hard so we put a good product out there. And then hopefully as we get better, more people find their way into Reed for those matches.
Yeah, so you mentioned in the Boise State matchup there were times in the third and fourth sets where you had leads, and pretty substantial, 6.7. Boise State went on a 7-0 run at one point and really swung back in it. What do you tell your girls after that happens? How do you prepare them next time to hold on to the lead?
Well, I kept telling them, I'm like, hey, my old boss used to say, hey, we'll beat, and he used to use Creighton because they were climbing the ladder and they've been getting really good. But he'd say, we'll beat Boise State when we're ready to beat Boise State. And we certainly were in it, but you can't give up that many points in a row. But we got to get better as serve receivers and just some communication stuff. So a few points don't get you down the stretch, and then hopefully we can stop some of those runs sooner. Because at one point it was like they scored 10 out of 11 points, and It's hard to stop the bleeding, but if you can cut one of those in half and then you can kind of keep it going, and obviously you keep the offense where it was. And for us, the offense was working as well as it has, which was really encouraging. But we got to find ways to make a few more stoppage of their point scoring runs, and that would win us that match.
Boise State was so tall and athletic on the front line. You know, we kept talking during the broadcast that you're not going to go through them. You're going to have to try and go around them. And I thought your team did a nice job at times of lobbing it just over those tall trees up front. Was that?
Yeah, that's certainly the case. I mean, I'd say we went through them quite a bit. I think Sadie and Jamie certainly were very aggressive. So, you know, they were hitting it really high, really hard. And if those, you know, the physical big tall players don't get their hands on the ball when they're blocking, and if it's the side of their arms, you get favorable deflections. We certainly got a lot of those, but they were what I call blowing up some diggers at times, where they were hitting it with a speed that, you know, even when it hit somebody, they weren't able to dig it, which was really cool. And then we got even more offensive production out of Line Robarge, and that will certainly, if she gets on the scoreboard more, if Danny continues to get better, and then obviously if we figure out the connection between our setters and Emery, we'll really have some weapons to score offensively.
I really thought Robarge did a nice job on that cross court because she's left-handed, right? And so it looks different coming out, and a number of times she landed the cross court kill shot perfectly, I thought.
Yeah, she's done really well. I mean, she's just an amazing personality. Obviously, I'm a little bit more aggressive just by nature. So teaching her it's okay to kind of be aggressive. She wants to be really good. I want her to be really good, and she's going to be a mainstay here for 4 years. If we have anything to say about it. So we're just going to keep pushing her and keep getting her, to be more aggressive and confident. And I think as she does, she's going to flourish.
And then I think overall, the player I was most impressed with was Sadie Bluth. She seems to be able to do it all. She serves really well. She can play on the front line. She can play in the middle. It seems like her versatility is really strong.
Yeah, I mean, her ability to score she's got a really special arm, is what we would say. It's just very natural. Her mechanics are great, and she puts a lot of heat behind the ball, especially when her approach and everything is going fast and aggressively when she's jumping. And she's getting way better as a passer and a defender, and that's really what I told her after the match. And it's like, hey, we're going to train you like you're a libero, because as you climb the ladder with the passing and the defense, that's what's going to earn you a first-team all-conference selection here down the road, because people are going to come at her. They're going to try to break her as a passer to get in her head as an attacker, and that's what she's going to have to learn to deal with as we move forward.
Yeah, let's talk about your I've heard libero, and you say libero. Is it?
Yeah, I think it's pronounced libero. Everybody says libero. It's the American thing, so I don't know.
I don't want to speak out of school. Yeah. So, but let's talk about Asia Sopoana. I thought a couple of times Boise State really attacked her yesterday as well. How did you feel she handled the heat?
She's an amazing defender. She's everything you want as a defensive person in that position. We have to get her up to speed with where she needs to be as far as a passer at our passing standard. She's below that right now. I think she knows it, but hey, I like having those things in front of us. We know what to work on. We know how to get better at it. And to her credit, she needs time to get the repetitions because the serve reception is, in my mind, it's the hardest thing to improve on quickly. You just need time seeing balls flying over the net, different types of serves, tough serves, and then learning, how to get them on your arms where you need them, and then to aim it where it needs to go. But she's certainly getting better. And then I thought Rachel Driscoll had an amazing match. She was a really, really good passer. She probably passed well enough to be in the jersey yesterday. So as a coaching staff, we need to make sure we're paying attention to what those numbers are. But they both, I was really happy with their performance.
Yeah, there's good competition at every position, which is great for a coach, right? It would be bad if it was, not competitive at every spot. So that's great. So let's talk about what's coming up on the schedule. You're going to hit the road again. How you have this great home match, and it's the only one in the non-conference. How tough is that?
For me, it's not that tough because I've been a part of a head coach that if he can't get the teams that he needs to have in scheduling, we've been on the road 4 weeks to start the year, so I'm used to it. For the girls, it's tough. 5 matches in 4 days and practicing and then traveling and all of that certainly can wear on them. We're going to try to give them a little bit more rest here. But, it's one of those mentality things where like, hey, we're not going to use this as an excuse. We probably have the hardest, most rough schedule of the tournament, having to play in the morning, then at night, and then back the earliest in the morning. So they know what's coming. But we're going to take every challenge and be excited about it. Yeah,
you're going to go to UC Riverside. You're going to play Air Force on Friday the 9th at 10:30 in the morning, and then Cal Baptist Friday night at 7 o'clock, and then the hosts, UC Riverside, Saturday at 10:30. What kind of competition is that going to be? Are those good squads?
Air Force is 6-0 currently. They're another Mountain West team. They have a few players that are really, really good. We know their head coach, great guy. So, you could argue that may be the toughest match right off the bat. Cal Baptist is, I grew up in Southern California and I know that area well. It's actually the first match I ever got to play in was against Cal Baptist. But they've been getting better as a program since entering Division I. So they're all going to be tough. That's the thing. We can compete with anyone when we play well, as we saw with Boise State. But if we don't play well or don't execute, we also are susceptible of, maybe losing some games to some teams that we shouldn't. So hopefully we can keep the execution where it needs to be so that doesn't happen.
Definitely. Well, we'll be cheering you on from afar. Next time the Bengals will be at home, will be the Big Sky opener against Northern Colorado on September 22nd. Until then, good luck, and we'll be cheering you on.
All right, thanks, guys.
Sean Carter, first-year volleyball coach at Idaho State University. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Bengal Nation, for tuning in to another edition of ROAR'n With the Bengals. I'm Brandon Baney. We'll be back to break it all down again next week right here on ISUBengals.com.